Okay, a lot to get to today, but first I want to address the nervous little pepper in the room, Grace Parra. What do we owe the pleasure this week? I'm so glad that you're here.
I am so excited to be here too. It is pepper season, so things are spicy, things are hot all over the country, and I've really been feeling it. But I think, it's exciting to come over here and be around my other hot little spicy peppers here on Hysteria today. So I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you so much. I am growing
Yes.
peppers, and as you know, the place where I live is a good pepper growing environment, dry,
Yes.
hot, sunny. The habaneros I've grown are so hot that you will see God if you eat them.
How do you prepare them? Because
I don't prepare them. I give them to people who can stand eating them. I'm like, I can't do anything with these.
I should take some off your hands, and in exchange, I'm going to bring you some succulents, which are the only things that I can successfully grow. I'm really trying to get into my herb era, but I'm not there. I'm not there yet.
This is a great partnership because I'm awesome at killing succulents. So
Beautiful.
You can bring them. I will kill them. So, as listeners of the show know, we do something called Tour de Fuckery. Grace is going to help be our tour guide on Tour de Fuckery this week. We say this all the time. It's important to pay attention to what's happening in your state. State houses may lack the glamour and pancakey makeup and the bright lights of cable news, but it's where a lot of the true fuckery happens. So if something awful but under the national radar is happening in your state, you can let us know by tipping us at hysteria@crooked.com. Just send a news article with some details, just so it's not like a letter that's like, Sherry from Oklahoma says it's bad. No, just send a news article so we don't have to dig as much, because we do get a lot of these nominations.
And we got some great ones this week, by the way. I'm
we
really
got
excited
some
for this
good
tour.
ones. Let's start in Missouri, Grace. The show me state, where the asshole governor is showing his whole ass. Governor Mike Parson is a Republican, and he is defending himself because he's in a bit of a PR bad situation. I think that's the technical word for it.
Yep, PR bad situation. That's right.
A PR bad situation. So it turns out that Missouri is the only state in the entire country that opted out of continuing a federal program that allows people receiving summer school lunches, summer food service, to grab and go their lunches. Now, this program of grabbing and going your food service was a pandemic invention. It was designed to allow people who needed assistance getting fed over the summer. It allowed people to collect their school lunch and leave and eat it elsewhere. Now, before you had to eat it on site unless you had a specific number of, or some extraordinary circumstances that make it so it's not possible. But the federal government was like, you know what? That worked really well during pandemic. We fed a lot of kids. Let's, if your state wants to do it, then, just let us know. Missouri, the only one that didn't, Grace.
The only one. The only one. And the reason is what is the kicker for me here, that Kelly Jones, who is the communications director for Governor Mike Parson, said that this was because our state was returning to normal operations, as in COVID just stopped affecting Missouri. COVID just isn't a thing in Missouri, so that's why we moved past it. And the craziest thing to me, statistics-wise, is that this resulted in up to 97% fewer meals distributed compared to other states. That is a huge amount. It's not like, 1 or 2% of students decided not to show up to get their lunches. This is like the vast majority. Yes, it's striking to me. It's like you have to work to be that much of an asshole.
It seemed like a real kick to underprivileged children to prove a political point. It also doesn't make sense in the first place that people would have to sit there on site and eat their lunch.
I know.
Like,
I hate that. I hate that. Forced friendship is like, don't make this be a bonding thing. We're just trying to get everybody fed. It's also like, this isn't suddenly opening the state up to an Uber, DoorDash, Postmate situation where they have to go deliver the food. The food was it didn't cost them any effort to just have students come pick it up from the location where the food is being provided anyway, you know? So why punish them for having that as an option?
Yeah, well, at least Governor Mike Parson really stuck it to those recipients of reduced and free school lunches. Those are the people that really need to be taken down a few notches, especially in the state of Missouri.
Exactly.
That sucks. I'm really glad that there's a sort of blowback happening. I'm glad that this is not something that is held up as an example of great leadership, because it's a real bitches can't govern situation. Like,
yes.
Alyssa and I talk about this a lot, where it's like governors of red states who run on the platform that like the government sucks, and then they get into government and they suck at governing. This is another example of just this bitch cannot govern.
This bitch cannot govern. And it is striking to me that Missouri was the only state that upheld this. I mean, there's so many other states that I would have, like, maybe if there's just so many other red states that could have done this too. If there was a quorum of some variety amongst red states.
He just went it alone. He just went it alone. It's like he didn't call anybody. He didn't talk to anybody. Nope. He's clearly not on any of the red state governor text chains.
No. Oh, no. He's not on any of the WhatsApps.
No, he doesn't get invited to the red state governor girls' weekends, or, you know, golf weekends or whatever. And yeah, I mean, way to show that you don't have any friends, Governor Parson. Yikes. Okay, let's move to Louisiana. This story is one of those stories that every time I encounter it in the news, it is just as effective as the first time I read it. I'm like, just
mind blown.
Mind blowing. Okay, so something we've talked about on the show before, a lot of these abortion bans were not written with the greatest care or knowledge of medical facts or legal dexterity. There is a lot of these abortion bans are written in a way that is, to use a legal term, stupid. And because of the stupidity of the bans, real people are being hurt. So Louisiana lawmakers are now saying that the hospital that denied a woman an abortion when she was carrying a fetus that did not have a skull. Louisiana lawmakers are now saying that the hospital grossly misinterpreted the law that would have allowed her to get an abortion. So this woman, Nancy Davis, was denied an abortion initially after a 10-week ultrasound revealed that her fetus had acrania, which is a lack of a skull. And doctors said that she initially said, well, we can't give you an abortion because it doesn't fall under the exception. But now lawmakers are saying it actually does. Yeah, great. Grace, what do you make of that?
You know, the way that they justify how acrania works is that the skull would follow in terms of its development.
Not true. Not a medical fact.
Not a medical fact.
That's not how fetal development works. Medicine is not a magical wish list that you could just be like, wouldn't it be cool? No,
there's no gene like from this season of What We Do in the Shadows where you can magically wish for a skull to appear after it's been shown that your fetus does not have a skull. So it is striking to me the lack of medical background, the fact that laws are allowed to be passed with such a lack of medical background. Man, Louisiana, you have really made a case for yourself to be the biggest state of importance on the Tour de Fuckery this week, because this is real. This is real. And you know what, Erin, to your point about how every time I read this story, every time I hear about it, it continues to shock me, to scare me, to terrify me, because I do start to realize the futility of laws that are written by people who don't know what they're talking about medically, and it's very scary.
There are no fact checkers on the laws. No. Like they just can be like, "Yep, implant an ectopic." I mean, this didn't happen in Louisiana, but you know, in Ohio and other states, there were attempts to write into the law that ectopic pregnancies must be implanted into the uterus.
Yeah,
what the fuck?
Yeah, there's just like a lack of even basic knowledge about how children develop in the womb. It's very, very scary. It's really, really scary. So, I don't know what happens now. I did hear, though, that the woman who we're discussing is going to travel to North Carolina for an abortion with financial assistance from donors. And they have given her more than $25,000 on GoFundMe, which, again, how dystopian to have to fund an abortion, an out-of-state abortion on GoFundMe. But I'm thrilled that she's going to be able to receive that procedure.
It's absolutely great for Ms. Davis and her family so that they can start healing from this, which I'm sure was a traumatic event for them.
Yeah.
But GoFundMe is such a Band-Aid on a bullet hole when it comes to this.
I know.
I mean, this woman that we're discussing is far from the only person in Louisiana who has needed abortion care and been denied it. Yeah. I was reading this week that one patient was forced to deliver a non-viable fetus at 16 weeks rather than undergo a surgical procedure that is an abortion that would have saved her from having to undergo that trauma. It's just pure cruelty designed by people who have no fucking clue what they're talking about.
Do you think that this is so dark, but do you think that the word abortion needs, like, we need a different word for it so that people don't feel like it, you know what I mean? Like a procedure like the one that you're talking about should be, a little, I don't know, giving it a softer term so that it is something that nobody...
It's a DNC. It's a DNC.
And it's a DNC.
People get them all the time, though. But, there's no difference in the procedure that you would have. Your intent before getting the DNC does not affect what the procedure is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
it's if I'm getting a tooth pulled, for example, and I'm happy while they're doing it, that doesn't change the fact that they're pulling my tooth. It is what it is. It's a medical procedure that is the medical procedure. I think maybe just calling it a DNC.
Maybe that's
no matter what the intention of the person going in, just calling it a DNC. I also feel like gynecological vocabulary needs needs a refresh from the top down.
Oh my God.
I feel as though pregnancy starting from the first day of your last period, very confusing for people. It allows people like Greg Abbott in Texas to write laws saying that a 6-week abortion ban and you have 6 weeks to figure it out. No, you don't. You don't have 6. You don't even. You're not even pregnant. It has not even implanted into your womb until, according to the gynecological calendar, looking backward, you are 3 weeks pregnant. So, we need to do something about that.
Also, the term, geriatric mother, geriatric pregnancies, that feels so outdated and so intimidating and so scary. And I just don't think it helps anybody to have that kind of terminology floating around. It really, really, really needs to change.
AMA, advanced maternal age. Advanced, ooh, geez. Okay. That's an entire horse of different color. So
that's an episode right there.
I know, seriously. Let's go to Ohio. I mean, I'd prefer not to, but let's go to Ohio, proving once again that it is in the Michigan-Ohio battle the inferior of the two states. I gotta say.
Oh yes, I support that.
Never lived in either one. Went to college that was a big rival of the University of Michigan. Gotta say, Michigan really kicks Ohio's ass in many, many ways. And here's another. Doesn't have to. Here's the thing: Ohio has potential.
Absolutely,
Ohio has potential. It could be okay.
Rich history. I mean, I've been to Ohio. I've been to Dayton a few times. I feel like there's potential. There's a spark there because it feels like, there's reminders that this place was once a real city of industry, a real progressive town 100 years ago. And now not so much.
Nope. Now they're having fights with wind and solar projects under a new state law.
Brother.
Yeah. At least 10 Ohio counties have passed resolutions that would block development of new utility-scale wind and solar projects that are in their jurisdictions. The counties have done this after a 2021 enactment of a state law that gave locals veto power over renewable energy generation sites. A veto power that doesn't exist for fossil fuel developments. So the state law enables counties to locally reject green energy, but not the kind of energy that is draining the blood from the planet and then drowning us in it.
That seems fair. Totally fair.
Yeah. So as I was reading about this, I was like, this sounds like a bunch of Facebook mom nonsense. And then I got to this one part, Grace. I think that you probably know where I'm going. Can we talk a little bit about what some of the anti-wind and solar literature that was being distributed in some of these counties said?
Vote out big wind. Big wind. It's so great.
It's literally old man yells at cloud as a system of government. Like, get out of here, wind. We
don't want you.
You can come through, but we're not going to derive any electric power from you. So help me God. There was also... go ahead.
I was just going to say the quote from the GOP Senate President Matt Huffman, too, really stood out to me, where he says, listen, economic development, innovative energy technology, these things are always welcome in the state of Ohio, but not at the expense of rural communities who do not want them. As though every person who lives in a rural community is against wind and solar technology, because I don't feel like that's right. I feel like it's really unfair to place that on rural communities. And I also think that teaching people how innovative these technologies can be and also how accessible they can be is super important. And it just seems like Ohio's not doing that.
Yeah, not doing great. There's also some disinfo out there about solar panels leaching poison into the ground, which is rich considering like, oh, really? What do fossil fuels do?
What do fossil fuels do in that case, right?
Gonna take a nice little bath with your baby in a fossil fuel pool?
Sure. No problem. Love that. Love that for us.
It really, something about this story makes me believe that if water were something that were privatized and sold to us, and Democrats were like, you know what? Why don't you collect rainwater? Collect some rainwater and use that to water your lawns instead of like buying water and dumping it on the lawns. These people would cover their lawns up and be like, do not fall on me, water. I insist on the stupidest possible way of doing things. Ugh.
I love the anti the elements, anti-Mother Nature stance that we're moving towards. Yeah, anti-wind. Big wind is the funniest. Big wind also sounds like a fart, by the way, and that makes me laugh a lot.
You gotta keep out big wind
going.
There's something that also says to me that maybe they're just kind of echoing former President Trump's animosity toward windmills. He hates windmills.
He hates them.
Yeah,
why does he hate them so much? Because of his hair?
No, that's a great guess. Actually, he has a golf course and resort in Scotland, and the government put windmills offshore, and he got mad because he said they ruined the view from the golf course, and
they ruined the view.
Yeah, he's hated windmills ever. He's holding a grudge against like windmills as a technology. Very funny, Donald.
I want to have a grudge that petty, by the way. I really need a grudge that petty at some point in my life.
Oh, you'll figure it out. I have faith in you. You know what? I was saying nice things about Michigan, but there are some kind of not so great things about Michigan. Among them, Tudor Dixon, Republican nominee for governor. I just want to flag something that she said. Mm-hmm. By the way, Tudor Dixon, does that sound like the name of a girlfriend of an Alabama quarterback or what? So
homecoming queen, Tudor Dixon.
Oh my gosh. So I just want to get this quote exactly correct. Mm-hmm. Tudor Dixon said that forcing a teenage girl who had been raped to give birth could be, quote, healing. Could be that being forced to give birth to your rapist baby could be healing. We don't want to spend too much time on Tudor Dixon on this episode just because some new polling has come out, and Governor Gretchen
Big Gretch, baby.
Up double digits in some recent polling. So
love that.
I feel like Tudor Dixon is deep in find out season. First half of the year, fuck around season. Now we're like in find out season. And,
find out season. I love that. We have found out about Tudor Dixon.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that the state of Michigan understands that. That's great.
Yeah. Well, they still got to show up and vote on election day, but
that's true.
Then it'll really be find out season. Okay, Grace, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I have an interview that I don't want you to miss. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Super excited for today's interview. Today's guest is a scholar, teacher, and cultural theorist who specializes in the cultural constructions of Black girlhood and womanhood in material, visual, and digital culture. She's assistant professor in the Department of Gender and Women's Studies and program in African American and Africana Studies at the University of Kentucky. And she's the author of By Black, How Black Women Transformed U.S. Pop Culture. Dr. Aria Halliday, welcome to Hysteria.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So before we drill down on the specific topic that I think you're the perfect person to address, I would love for listeners to hear more about your scholarship and what cultural figures or media are currently holding your interest as a layperson and as an academic.
Oh, that's a heavy question. That second part. I could talk about my scholarship all day.
Okay, cool.
So I really think about the ways that U.S. popular culture has, really been influenced by Black women in various aspects. So the dolls that we play with, if you think about makeup that we're wearing, the clothes that we're wearing, right? There are Black women who are in these designer seats who are really making choices about the ways that we experience everything. And in a lot of ways, pop culture is this unifying experience, so we don't actually realize who is behind the creation of these objects. So my book, By Black, is really thinking about how Black women have been influential in the way that we think about Cinderella, the way that we think about Barbies, the way that we think about even hip hop contemporarily. And I really hope that people experience, the excitement that I have around what is happening in our culture and how Black women are really, at the forefront of changing those things. Which brings me to the second part of your question, which is about what's holding my attention right now. And I'm really obsessed with this upcoming rapper. Her name is Doechii. And she is just strange in all the best ways. I think she's doing some things that, maybe 15 years ago, you might consider something like Nicki Minaj. She was kind of the only person out there doing it. The field is kind of packed right now. There are a lot of people who you might consider really important and contemporary Black female artists. But Doechii is doing something I think that's a little interesting, a little more compelling in the same way that we might think of like Lil Nas X is like asking us to think about some different things. I think Doechii is in a similar conversation.
Oh, cool. I will have to check out Doechii after we get done recording this podcast. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about today, because I was like, we need to kind of unpack this. So something we've been seeing since the election of Donald Trump, and a little bit before, but mostly since, women dressed as handmaids showing up to protests. So like the handmaid, of course, from Atwood's Handmaid's Tale. There's all these warnings kind of being bandied about that we are going to turn into The Handmaid's Tale if things keep going the way they're going. But like Atwood herself has said that The Handmaid's Tale was based on things that already happened. So what do you make of the ubiquity of The Handmaid's Tale in discussions of abortion rights in the U.S.? And are the constant Handmaid's Tale references getting a little annoying?
Well, I think... Atwood, as you said, is like really thinking about things that happened from the early 20th century. So 1905 to like 1950 is really when she's like conceptualizing her book and thinking about things like the Soviet Union and Romania and other things that are happening that aren't necessarily contemporary to this moment. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really interesting that people use Handmaid's Tale, particularly the show. And I think it's really important to make that distinction that like, I don't even know that people are really reading Atwood's book, to be honest with you, but they're using the show as this really like visual marker of the ways that white women in particular are being treated in U.S. society. And I think, one, it's a little annoying because it's ahistorical, right? It's fiction. Yeah. But also, two, I think that it dismisses a kind of a larger conversation that's happening within Atwood's book, Handmaid's Tale, but also like reproductive justice kind of writ large in the United States. And so like in Atwood's book, for example, like she kind of writes off the fact that there aren't any Black people in the book as like, they're being pushed off to this, area in the Midwest. And as the children of Ham, they're just over there, right? So there's no real, people of color in the book at all, right? And so the people of color that we're seeing are directorial decisions, right? For the show. And so this like adaptation to think that like, like the reproductive rights of really white women are under threat based on what's happening in our culture right now, honestly, it's directly linked to decisions that white women have made as voters right? Decisions as white women have made politically over the course of, the 1950s to the present, since Atwood's, inspiration for the book. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a little annoying in the fact that it's ahistorical, right? So if we want to use Handmaid's Tale as this visual marker, that's really important and interesting because, it forces us to consider, this fictitious thing happening in our everyday lives, sure. But to say that like Handmaid's Tale is happening, right, it's a direct correlation to what's happening today, doesn't actually relate to the way that most women, I would say, most women, most trans people, most people of color are experiencing society and have been for 200 plus years.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into that a little bit. Like, how has the historical treatment of Black women and girls been erased in our current discussion of reproductive autonomy?
So, I mean, we know from the history of slavery that most of the ways that we experience gynecological exams even, right? So like you literally go to a gynecologist, they tell you to breathe deeply so they can insert these forceps. It's really painful. That whole experience comes from, Black women being tested on without anesthetics, without even consent really by, what they call the father of gynecology, which is J. Marion Sims. And I mean, so even in our contemporary experience, right, we have a thing that's kind of not thought about or understood, even like contemporary conversations about how IUDs are inserted and they're super painful, but we don't get anesthesia for them. All of that comes from, testing that happened on Black women and girls, right, without their consent, not too long ago, right? I mean, even like the forced sterilization and conversations about who is worthy to bear children is a contemporary one. I mean, they were sterilizing women in Puerto Rico and South America. They were sterilizing Black women here and some white women who are considered to be unfit, up until the 1980s, even when you're considering like mental health and disability. And so, I mean, it's a long conversation, but I will say that like, the way that we think about reproductive justice is not just about like what ways that we can give birth if we decide to or not, but even the mechanisms that we use, like, how birth control, for example, has been tested on communities of color for a long time without consent and without knowledge of all the dangerous things that could happen, which is how, they get pulled off the market and then they get tested in various other places and they happen. But like, that can completely change a person's ability to give birth at any given time. And there isn't really documentation of those things when we pull up Handmaid's Tale as the example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are some, I guess, cultural artifacts, like what are some pieces of cultural production that address reproductive coercion or reproductive justice as it impacts people of color? Like what's out there that gets it right?
Yeah, I would say, so there's a book that continues to be a touchstone for me. It's even kind of an old book right now, but it's by a scholar. Her name is Dorothy Roberts, and it's called Killing the Black Body. And it's a conversation about like everything that I've just said, but also about things like adoption and forced adoption that we have from various places, right? Which is also a part of the reproductive conversation. And so Dorothy Roberts is really great about considering not only what happens to Black women and Black girls, historically, but also, contextualize it for all of us, not just about what happens to our individual bodies, but what the systems at large are doing to control our decisions, over the course of our lifetime. And that's one book that I'm like, it continues to be, I think it came out in 1995 or something, and it continues to be a genius about all of the contemporary conversations and questions that we're having, especially politically right now. I'm thinking about your question, cultural artifacts that, get it right. I have to say that it's rare that they get it right. I think, even I'm thinking about shows like Shrill, for example, or Fleabag, or the other one is not going to come to me right now, but thinking about like more contemporary examples that show like how women of size have experiences around sex and sexuality and rape. And I mean, even those have Black women and women of color and gay people as kind of like sidekicks to this prominent narrative of a fat white woman as the protagonist. And so I can't think of examples that get it right, honestly, but I think that just means that there's space for, cultural creators to do more around reproductive justice and those conversations in the contemporary moment.
Mm-hmm. Did you watch I May Destroy You?
Yes. Oh my God.
What did you think of it? I mean, it's in the UK, so it's like a different,
Right.
and it's dealing with the African diaspora, but so it's a different situation. But what did you think of that show?
Yeah, I mean, Michaela Cole, I think, gets right the ways that women of color, especially in Europe, Black women in Europe, experience sex and sexuality. But it's hard. It's a really hard show to process in various ways. And I think that like one storyline that I think is really interesting is her friend, goes and is like, I'm going to live, hot girl summer. I think she's in Italy. And these guys have basically like plotted on her. But she doesn't know it, right? She thinks I'm experiencing this thing as individual choice. And it's actually like in this system of coercion that's happening around these other guys who have been planning to have sex with her. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting because ultimately, I think it says a lot about the system that we live in, that we think we have this individual choice and, I'm doing the best thing for me and this makes sense, but also how it's couched in this system that, actually controls our choices for us. Mm-hmm. And so that show is just brilliant. But for a number of other reasons.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brutal. But it's a great show. So so I feel as though when we see these people showing up to protest wearing Handmaid's outfits or, saying, oh my goodness, it's turning into the Handmaid's Tale on their text chain, I feel like there's good intentions there. But how do we bridge the gap between good intentions and historical accuracy?
Yeah. One, that's really hard. And two, I think, just like asking a question. Like, I think I do this in my classes all the time, and students come with, particular ideas about how the world works or, whatever it is that they want to talk about from their own perspective. I say, okay, like, where does that come from? Mm-hmm. Like, so like, what is dressing up as a handmaid do for the conversation? Like, why is that your particular touch point? And then you kind of work through like, oh yeah, I mean, it makes me think about the ways that like, Serena is being forced to have sex with this guy and, her baby is taken from her. She's being moved around, all these other things from the show. And I'm like, okay, what about your experience relates to that one? Because if you're not Serena, then you're actually appropriating someone else's narrative and saying that it's yours, right? And so in what ways can we think about your own reproductive experience, your experience with, gynecologists, your experience with IUDs or birth control pills, your experience with, having sex or being raped? Like, how do we think about those things, right, in conversation of your own experience and extrapolate them to the system rather than saying, let's take this fictional thing and apply it to everything else that might happen? Because fiction is indeed fiction. And there are actually really terrifying things that are happening that we don't need fiction to help us figure out. We need to think about it in contemporary moment. And then, also like vote. The way that you decide to vote, especially on the local level, impacts how we see things happening, on the federal level as well. And I think, we're coming up on primaries. We're coming up on really large scale decision making in local places. And that will impact the stuff that we see that happens on this federal level, like Dobbs being, and anything else that happens. There are a lot of conversations that are happening on the federal scale that are, could force us to have, local conversations differently. And so I think having that relationship with your local government has the ability to change what we're seeing happening on the federal level too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time, although I could probably sit here and talk to you all day because you are so smart. So you are, just to kind of end on a lighter note, so you're teaching at the University of Kentucky.
I am.
That is a red state. We have a lot of listeners who are teachers or who work in academia in red states. Do you have any words of encouragement or uplift as we go into another school year to people who are teaching, especially teachers in red states?
Yeah, I think that students are so brilliant. They are committed to having conversations that challenge them, that challenge the way that they grew up, that challenge the communities that they live in. I teach so many students that are like, I don't know anybody who would be in this class, but I'm here because I want to learn. And I think that means that in red states or even in blue states, purple states, we live in an environment where young people are really excited about and passionate about learning what things like Dobbs being overturned mean. Like, they want to know what it means, but they also want to know how they can change it too. And I think our job as educators is not to create an environment where they can't ask those questions, but is to, say, like, let's lay out everything that's possible and what can you do on your individual level in your individual life to make things happen. And I think that is the way that we approach education. That's the way that we approach change. And ultimately, I think it's possible that, we'll see other things happen in a positive light that our students, will take on and change, but we have to teach them how to do that.
Dr. Aria Halliday, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. Please come back again sometime.
I will. Thanks for having me.